We're going to boldly go where no one has gone before. First part, motivation. Engagement, autonomy, relevance, goal setting, climate, tone. Very important concept. What I'm going to pose to you at the end of the second part is I want to get your sense of which model I'm showing today is more appropriate for your content area. The tech variety model or this next model, what I would call the R2D2 model. Read, reflect, display, and do. Now, this woman in the picture there, her name is Dr. Ka Zhang from Wayne State. We almost hired her at Indiana in IST. She gave it second to somebody else, unfortunately. But 10 years ago, almost exactly, she had me speak to her class, and at the time, she was at Texas Tech. She said, Kurt, could you talk to my students about your R2D2 model? And I said, I don't have an R2D2 model. She says, yes, you do. I said, no, I don't. She said, well, all your syllabus says read, reflect, display, and do. I have a 4-part syllabus. For 15 years I had been teaching already. It's 2005. I've been teaching 16 years. And I didn't realize that I had done that it spelled R2D2. She says, can you talk to my class about the R2D2 model? And I said, okay, I guess I'll speak to your class about the R2D2 model. So then she said at the end of class, it went pretty well. I was speaking down to Texas Tech. She goes, let's do an article on this together. Can we do an article on the R2D2 model? And she said, and this gentleman, if he wants to, you're welcome to come in if you want. You're welcome to come in. Anyone's welcome. So first she has me speak to her class about the R2D2 model I didn't know I had. Then she said, let's write an article together. So we wrote an article together, and it came out in Distance Education. And then she said, let's write a book together. So we did. So that's why this book exists, and that's why it's the first one of the trilogy. So it's a 100 activities book, and I'll sign that one that you brought, Heidi. So this has a 4-part model, and I'll go through it. And there are 25 ideas in each of the 4 parts, or another 100 activities book. Now, this generation of students is always on their mobile devices somehow, right? They're connected. I even saw Larry before coming in here. You were connected, typing away. Even from adults to kids today have smartphones. Now, as instructors, we have access to an ungodly amount of information today. Before, we had a scarcity of knowledge. We had books and lectures. Now we have open educational resources. There's an article that came out from this past fall from the UK that talks about how faculty around the world are using open educational resources. In effect, we're moving from an age from direct instruction, didactic. My accounting training was all didactic, lecture-based, and a lot of serious difficult tests, to we're moving to more socialized learning. These are pictures of kids at Dubai Men's College in the UAE. So as I said earlier, we're moving from credit managers, I'll give you some C words, metaphors of instructors, not just cat herders, but credit managers, managing your students in your class, behavioral approaches, courtroom judges, judging their performances, counselors, interacting, negotiating, discussing with your students. Consulting. They have a project, they want some feedback, you give them some consultative advices. You give them some suggestions, you nudge them, you push them. You push them to the edge of their envelope. You push them to the edge of what they can do. That's what a dissertation does, right? That's what a master's thesis does. How can we take that and make that part of all education, the push to the edge of their comfort zone? Now, Dr. Lee Eman and I had a project back in 1998 to 2003 called the Ticket Project. We knew the first week when we told the teachers in the program they're going to get 6 graduate credits during the year, but they have to produce something each semester. When we pushed them to the point where one would walk up crying, we knew we pushed them to the edge of the envelope. We knew we pushed them to the edge. Then we'd show them last year's gallery of work. We'd show them what the teachers did the year before, and they would say, I could do that, I could do that. We knew how far to push them. Well, today, with all these resources, we have to find ways to scaffold the learning, provide the supports, push them to the edge of their envelope, find that content, and then be an orchestra conductor, weaving it all together. Or be a course ambassador, or you put your content up on the web, you put your syllabus on the web. That's how Dr. Jung found out about me. She read my syllabi on the web, said, you have an R2D2 model. You're a course ambassador for that class. My P540 class right now, I'm getting the new syllabus up. I have a lot of content already on the web. I have videos up on each week of the class on behavioral theory, cognitive theory, social learning theory, Bandura. I've got all that. I'm a course ambassador. I'm trying to get people around the world to understand this content, not just those in my class, and that's what MOOCs do. MOOCs get you to be a course ambassador, if you will. And we're curators. We're finding stuff, we're curating content and making it available. What good instructors are curators, like a museum curator. We find the gems, the golden nuggets, and too often we debate the junky stuff. Every department should find 10 or 20 high-quality contents, whether it's United Nations content, Smithsonian content, NASA, whatever it is, APA content. In teaching psych, there's Gestalt experiments and other things that you can use in your classes, you see. Be a curator and talk to others in your department on what they found, and then together you can create a whole set of resources. I think the best two metaphors of these 9, curator is one many people are nodding. I saw you all nod your heads yes, but this other one is one I like, and that's concierge. I look at myself as someone who provides a roadmap for my students. I find places to go if it's a rainy day. And so one of my syllabi is 75 pages long. I had a student from Evansville walked into the class last year and he said, Dr. Bonk, I can't do this course. Yes, and then at the end, it was an online class. He didn't walk in, but he sent me an email. He said, I can't. And I teach this live, I teach it face-to-face, teach it online, I teach it combined. At the end of the semester, he said it was too short. That was his words, not my words. He said, Dr. Bonk, this is too short. This content's changing so fast. You've given us kind of a skeleton. What I do is everyone's got to read 4 primary articles a week, but I give them 6 for a choice. They read 3 or 4 of the 6. Then I give them some extra things from the news I call tidbits to excite them to say, here's how the content's actually being used in the real world. And then I give them some tools they might explore, because this is a course on emerging technologies. So that's why the syllabus becomes long. And then recently I contracted it a bit. I thought 75 is kind of long, so I contracted back to 45. Then I go back and forth, and it goes back. And so I'm a concierge. I'm a camping trip guide. I take students on an expedition with me. Some might look at this as a cognitive apprenticeship. And in a cognitive apprenticeship, you want to foster reflection. You want to foster elaboration. You want to foster discussion. There are principles that folks like John Seeley Brown, who's a famous, I don't know what you call him, a psychologist, educator. He used to run Xerox Palo Alto Research Park, where the mouse was created, where notebooks were, laptops were created. And, Xerox Park was the place for innovation in computer education, computers in education. He wrote a book a while ago called The Social Life of Information, how learning at a water cooler helped Xerox repairmen learn about how to fix Xerox machines. It's not what you learn in classroom training, but what you learn outside of it. So he talks about in this article that came out in 1988, situated cognition, a new field, situated cognition apprenticeship. We need to have coaching, practice, multiple practice, collaboration, reflection, articulation, and apprenticeship, pushing, nudging, probing. And I think what good educators are is we are people who assist in learning. We find ways to foster learning by finding ways to weave or summarize what happened. We find ways to foster a collaboration or teaming, reflection, all these things. We assist in different ways. It's not just direct instruction and testing today. That's part of it. We still need to direct instruction, but we also need exploration. We also need collaboration. We also need group discussion. If we divided the 100% time of class up into 20% group discussion, 20% competition tests, 20% direct instruction, 20% collaboration, and 20% exploration, we'd be better off, I think. I just made all that up. Don't write it down. Okay, so let's look at the R2D2 model. Apprenticeship.
Look, this isn't a Romeo and labor camp. I don't have to answer your questions. I don't give a damn what you think.
Now that's Q. Q was asking questions in this show, Star Trek Next Generation. He's always pushing, always asking questions. And there's actually a website called Big Questions Online that I'm going to show you here in a minute. that gets you to ask and gets students to ask each other big questions, gets them to think outside the box a little bit. Okay? So addressing learning styles. Now, as Larry knows, learning styles has a huge problem in reliability and validity. And so a lot of educational psychologists don't believe that learning styles is an appropriate term to use, but teachers, instructors, find them valuable to reflect on how you're teaching, what you're doing in your class. So this model, R2D2, some look at it as a learning style model. I look at it as a problem-solving wheel, a way to address diversity.
We are engaged.
So how can technology address diverse learners? And we're getting more diverse, as that map showed earlier. We're getting more and more diverse. So here's the R2D2 model. Read, reflect, display, and do. I'll have 25 activities in there in the book, 25 reflection or writing, 25 reading, 25 visualizing, displaying, and 25 doing. You can start with doing and go in this direction. You don't have to start with reading. But in the book, we had to start somewhere. We start with reading, and then we go this way. We look at it as a problem-solving wheel. Now, some activities combine methods together. It's not just a reading activity. It's not just a reflection activity. It might be a hands-on activity that involves reading and reflection. It might do all four. But this is one way to divide the web up into 4 quadrants of things you can do. So while you're reading things and your dean says you should do something, you can say, where does it fit in this wheel? It gives you a way to not be so afraid. It gives you a way to reduce the tension, if you will. And so we actually have, in room 1002, Larry, we have lightsaber battles, and that's me jumping off and my student following. I have a real lightsaber. He has a plastic one, and you guessed it, I get to win, you know. And I didn't bring my lightsaber with me here. I forgot I left it at home. But.
What do you think? You hit a princess and a guy like me? No.
So that's Jing Li, who just finished his doctorate. I saw him in Hong Kong 2 months ago. He brought me there, and he's doing great. We had an interesting class in that session. So read, reflect, display, and do. Read, reflect, display, and do. 4 things that you can do, or 4 ways to think about things. The first part is reading activities. Now, this guy here is Geordie LaForge from Star Trek. I stood next to him in Austin, Texas a couple of years ago at a conference called South by Southwest EDU, and I didn't know it was him. He didn't have his visor on, you know. But he's into reading Rainbow, reading things.
Computer, this is Captain Picard. Return all command functions to the station.
Alpha 2 could...
So reading. He's reading from his notebook. He's reading from his iPad. Words, written expressions. There are tools for you to collect oral histories of people in the community. One tool that's free to collect oral histories is called Meograph. So if you're into audio files, and today audio and video are both exploding online. PBS has a website on slavery in the US. And they have files that they found, audio files from 1920s and 1930s of former slaves and sons and daughters of former slaves that they've posted up using tools like this. They have a whole assembly of oral history about slavery. You can click on different years, 1884, 85, 86, or 1864, 65, 66, and find out what life was like in the 1800s. Very interesting website from the PBS. Life of a musician. I had biography.com up here earlier, but you can read about a musician. You can learn about them by going to biography.com. You can learn about Bob Marley. You can learn about other musicians, Beethoven or Mozart or whomever. Here we got Beethoven, who shares a birthday with me. So reading about people, finding news about them. In this case, we have pictures as well. This actually overlaps 2 categories. Explore the lives of prominent people. Now, this gentleman here, you may not know, but your life changed because of him. This is Vannevar Bush, no relation to George Bush, thankfully. He wrote an article before World War II called As We May Think that he kept in a desk drawer until after World War II. You can find this in Atlantic Monthly. My students read it. They summarize it. He predicted Wikipedia in the 1930s. He predicted URLs. He predicted, online encyclopedias, online searching of information. The article is all about the web, basically, and future of computing. He's got a Wikipedia page. He's got other pages you can find out, as we may think, his article. Your students can read the article. My students read his article, pulled out quotes, and brought them to class to discuss the future of and the past of computing technology. He helped create Raytheon Corporation. He helped create the National Science Foundation. This guy was an MIT dean before they grabbed him away to help with World War II. Pretty famous guy. Vannevar Bush. How many of you heard of Vannevar Bush before this? Oh, you have. Okay. You're getting trained here. Good. Okay. So you're from Honduras? So they talk about him in Honduras.
Oh, we talked about him in one of the activities we did for our class
Good.
at SIU.
Good. So what I have my students do is read his and then read parts of Charles Wiedemeyer's book and compare their ideas. You know, you read about them in the same, okay, you're in the same class. Okay. Twitter feeds. Some professors are having students track the life of someone famous through their Twitter feed, through their Twitter posts. Okay. Find out what they're doing, what they're interested in, what they're writing about, what conferences they're going. Another idea for text is grammar checkers. My international students are particularly concerned about their grammar. There are tools that you can post in to see if you're using active voice or passive voice or things like that. Some of these tools are free. Some of these tools have a free version and a paid higher level version. But grammar checkers are growing today. And these are some examples or titles where you just cut and paste in to a little box. You type, you cut and paste in, and they'll give you recommendations on what to change.
I don't trust you, Q.
Text-based learning. Number 2 is reflections, reflective learning on the internet. So here we've got observational learning, part 2. Let's see if I can get this to play.
Captain Bonk, supplemental. Our rescue mission to the Sigma 3 solar system has been halted by an immense grid and an untimely visit from Q.
Okay, so Q comes back, gets them to reflect. Part 2 of our model is about reflection. It's about getting people to think. It's the part, if I had to admit to Larry when he nominated me for a teaching award a long time ago, or I got the Gorman a long time, it's the part I didn't do that good. I wasn't good at getting my students to reflect and debrief. You know Tyagi? You know Tyagi? Tyagi a famous creativity facilitator. He was part of our faculty at one point. A lot of his ideas, and if you've never been to Tyagi.com, Thiagi, it's one of the most fascinating websites out there. Tyagi comes up with one new idea a day or a strategy for teaching a day. And he has many of that he's posted at Tyagi.com. His real name is like Sivasalam Tijarajaran, so he goes by Tyagi. And he purposely flunked the engineering exam in India so he could become a teacher. That's what he told me anyhow. But Tyagi, at the end of presenting, will debrief. He always has you reflect. He always has you think about, what did I just do there? Why did we do it? Okay? Part 2 of the model is maybe the most important part of the R2D2 model. But it's the part that I've been negligent in the 90s, but in the past 5 or 6 years, I've been focusing more and more. You notice in the last section, I had us reflect on which of those ideas can you use, kind of thing. I kept coming back. I'm trying to foster that in my class. I sometimes start a class by saying, okay, for 1 minute, let's write a minute paper on what you remember from last time. Let's post it on the wall. Let's have a poster session of what everyone learned from last time and start with that. And what didn't you learn, kind of thing. So constantly reflecting to get them to elaborate, as well as to clarify, as well as to create summaries. Elaboration expanding, but then coming back and contracting with an abstract or a 100-word summary. So Big Questions Online is a website. I wasn't lying. There actually is another website called Big Think. Big Think is a website where they bring in famous people, like they might bring in Richard Branson to talk about Virgin Airlines. They might bring in Deepak Chopra to talk about religion, or they might bring in John McCain to talk about politics. Big Think is a very interesting website. A similar website, though, is called Big Questions Online, where they post questions like, is curiosity essential for humans to flourish? Can you control your mind? Do we have souls? And then the students debate. Now in my classes, I have students create these kind of questions and discuss them, BQOs, related to the content. Infographics. We are living in an age of increasing data that needs to be summarized in a short way, like an infographic. My son is creating infographics for where he works at Global Zero. He's trying to eliminate nuclear weapons, and right now with the Iran deal and whatnot, they're creating a lot of infographics to explain the deal and what's going on. And here we've got an infographic of women in science. How many, in entering into STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. It's a quick way to get an overview of a field or a discipline. Okay? Podcast show reflections. I have my students who might listen to a podcast of someone, or read a blog of someone, or read a book of someone, or watch an online conference keynote, but reflect on it. Have them do a reflection on what they just listened to or what they just watched. There are podcasts and blogs in every field. No matter what you teach, there's an expert or two or 100 out there. Workplace reflections. I don't know if Larry remembers teaching undergraduate educational psychology, but back in 1996, I was having our pre-service teachers reflect on the internet. You retired in 94, was it? 93, okay? So in 1996, I started having pre-service teachers reflect on their field experiences and link them to the textbook. So if we were using a particular undergrad textbook, I'd have them with questions in the field. What are you going to be looking for that relates to this week's topic? So trying to link internships, practicums, and field experiences, okay? You can also reflect on timelines. This is a timeline of Steve Jobs' life when he died a few years ago. You can have your students, if you teach about technologies, reflect on their own life and how technology has changed. There are timelines on many things on the internet today. When the Martin Luther King Memorial was put up in DC, that day there was a timeline put in on Martin Luther King's life that the USA Today created that anyone can use. You could click on the Stone of Hope and find out more information. You could click on underneath here on this timeline and get events that happened to Martin Luther King comes up along that interactive timeline, okay? The media today, CNN and the USA Today, Washington Post, New York Times, are creating contents for educators that we're not aware of. Anytime someone has a significant event, particularly someone dies, they're putting up their photo galleries, they're putting up a timeline of their life. There's all sorts of media. I think it was the New York Times put up a timeline of technology in schools from 1600s to 2010, about 5 years ago. It was fascinating to have my students not just think about the current technology, but what was used in schools in 1650 or 1750 or 1800 or whatever. Timeline tools are ways to visualize content. I'm not sure if I can, yeah, I don't think these two will have, but that's an example. This is an example of when Steve Jobs died. When Bill Gates retired, they had a timeline of Bill Gates' life up that I used in my class, okay? So there's Bill Gates. So there it is. I forgot I even had it in there. So there was one. It's interactive. You click on different links, you can find out more information. Now, let me point out, tools like Dipity, xtimeline, Simile are tools that your students can use to create their own timelines. So instead of using prepackaged ones, Dipity in particular is being used by many faculty. I see some heads nodding. Some people have maybe seen this or heard this. But you can have an assignment, a midterm, where they're creating a timeline of, I used to have an assignment, they had to create a timeline of the class content. And they used to bring paper and just roll it out on the floor in the classroom, and now you can do it on the internet, okay? Here's the Stone of Hope I had up there earlier. Here's a timeline of Facebook, when Facebook had a 10-year anniversary and went public. Here's a timeline of Harrison Ford's life as an actor, okay? And, you know, interesting, the Star Wars theme. And we got Mark Hamill, who they think I used to look like, now it's more like Yoda. But you know who this is? Anyone know who this is in this picture? This should be an easy one, relatively easy. This is a dropout of Indiana University. This is a dropout from our business school. He was a PhD student at Auburn and at Indiana both. This is the person who created Wikipedia. His name is Jimmy Wales. It's a timeline of his life from meeting an encyclopedia salesman in 1969 to today, and you know his dreams and visions. I met him in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia a few years ago at a conference, and I actually researched Wikipedia and Wikibooks in a couple of my articles. Cultural blogs. Now, you've got my book, Sam. On the page after my signing of that book, the next page, this woman appears. And she appears in the book in the middle as well. And the reason she appears, there are threefold. One, I went to graduate school with her. Two, she was my big sister, kind of. And I spoke to her class at San Francisco State University many times. She was in charge of ed tech there. But she died a few years ago in Rwanda with her husband doing missionary work. She gave up her seatbelt to someone else, and the driver was no good. He was swerving in the road, and the Jeep fell over, and she crashed her head and died a few days later. But she has a blog called comeandseeafrica.com, and her blog is still up on the web. Her name is Kim Foreman, and people can still use her blog and find out. That's the last post she had, July 28th, 2010, so it's 5 years ago now. She's got pictures, she's got text, she's got videos, she's got all sorts of things to find out about Rwanda and find out about Kenya and other countries there. She's created a cultural blog, and that cultural blog is free to the world for anyone to use. My point is a couple things. One, what you post today might be used next year, or 10 years from now, or 200 years from now. Number two, there's a lot of content on the web that you can use. You just have to give yourself license to go on the web for 1 hour. Give yourself license to just explore. I've talked to nurses. I don't know anything about nursing, but I gave myself license for an hour or two. I found a lot of things these nurses never knew existed. I've spoken to engineers. I've spoken to International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers recently, safety and health. And next will be accountants, and that's my degree program, but I don't know what's on the web. I'll find things, I'll show them. You just have to give yourself license. We're so, I hate to use the word busy, but many people have hectic lifestyles, and so we just don't give ourselves the hour to explore. Anyhow, light bulbs going off? Anything that you think you can use? Anyone got an idea so far? Again, these notes are posted at trainingshare.com. You can download my original slides. You can download the color PDF. They're in Dropbox, and the conference is posted. Anything you can use? Any ideas for my friend in Honduras? You got any ideas so far?
Many ideas.
Like what?
I really like the timeline.
Uh-huh.
The timeline, and also all the collaboration tools.
Okay, timeline tool. What about you?
I'm overwhelmed. I'm beginning to wonder if you ever sleep.
Okay, I have 14 minutes left, and I've got a few more things. I'm going to show you the other two parts of the Tech for ID model, but I think because she's overwhelmed. What's your first name? Abby. I'm going to have you turn to one or two people next to you, and what's one idea or two ideas you can use, and maybe one idea you're a little more hesitant to use. And I'll come back in a minute. Go ahead and turn to someone. What's something you can use that you've heard so far, and what's something you might not be able to use? Okay. My little friend Tiagi gave me this train whistle one. Ideas came from you got something you can hang your hat on, something you might use?
I like the idea of the 1 minute paper thing to
Yeah.
see what they learned from the last lecture and just use the process of elimination very much to see what we need to focus on the next lecture.
If you put them up on the wall, you can have your students look at them and mark on them, comment on them. So it's not just personal, make it a social activity. It could be before break. I'm going to put all those 1 minutes from the beginning of class. We're going to go up and just to peruse them, maybe, or grab one, take it as your own and rewrite it or somehow. Do something with it. Don't make these things one-off activities. Make them something where you're building on it, coming back to it, all that kind of stuff. Anything else that you could use?
Obviously, we reflected together, so I value reflection and she values the grammar check.
Uh-huh.
And then we've discovered that culturally, like even as the native English speaker, I value the grammar check
Yeah.
just as much as she does. So.
Okay. Grammar checks. These are tools that exist out there. Dictionary, online dictionaries, online sources. It's called referenceware. There's a technical term called referenceware. Online encyclopedias, like Wikipedia, or there are encyclopedias outside of Wikipedia. Of course, there's an Encyclopedia of Life that has 2 million species known to humankind that's been indexed by researchers. Unlike Wikipedia, this is crowdsourced. United Nations has the United Nations World Digital Library, which has cultures of the world. You can click on Korea and find out cultural artifacts and other things. So yeah, other ideas? Anything else people got? Infographics. Grab it. Okay. So I got a bit of good news during that my son called and just got a raise in the promotion. So, creative content specialist and a $5,000 raise, just out of the blue. So, but he's working for Global Zero, which is trying to eliminate nuclear weapons, or that's their push. And right now, it's a hot topic, and they were in D.C. last week for a bicycle race, trying to support Obama's plan and whatnot. So, yeah, kind of nice. You never know. 1 minute. That was my 1 minute reflection. Visual learning. Visual learning. The third part of the model. Part 3 gets us at displaying our learning, displaying our content, diagrams, flowcharts, timelines, pictures. We'll get a little Star Trek quote in here too.
Sir, how is it that the cube can handle time and space so well and us so badly?
Perhaps someday we will discover that space and time are simpler than the human equation.
Okay, so displaying our learning. There are tools out there for students to use where you can display their words in a picture format. There's a tool called Wordle where you can take your syllabus and put it in to see what words you're using too much. My students did that to me last year. They put my syllabus in, and this is what they came up with. They said, you're using the word learning too much, you're using the word social too much. And they put it on my office door after they got their grades, and they thought they were funny. Okay? So there are a number of tools that are all free. Wordle, Tagzedo, Tagul, Words. I think this is an interesting concept. It gets at Ellen Pavio's dual coding theory, kind of learning visually and verbally. Here we got a visual display of words. There's one for music, there's another one for music, just visualizing like a concept map or a timeline or a taxonomy, seeing things, visualizing things. Here we've got another infographic. Now, how might we reflect on this infographic? I found August 5th, it's a new infographic about rainforests connected to chocolate bars. Do you know how much of the rainforest is being, depleted because we're growing more and more chocolate? Because people are craving chocolate, so they're trying to create, cocoa plants in parts that didn't have them previously. And so here's how much land's being cleared out. Here's how many miles you could have driven a car in comparison. So an infographic out there. There's another infographic. These are from my friend Aaron Daring, adventure learning guy I had up there. This is an infographic on the ice melt in the northern parts of the world. So you can see the polar ice cap being, in an animation sequence here from This is National Geographic. This is August 3rd. This is only a week ago. Boom, it's in my talk here. Things can, just like in your class, you can have things coming up that you can embed in your class to get students interested. Here you can visualize the ice shrinking. If we have some conservative radio talk show hosts who don't believe that we have any shrinking going on, just send them a clip and so forth. Concept mapping. There are tools out there today to students for them to post their learning up, their connections, their macro ideas, their micro ideas, causal relationships. This tool is called spicy nodes, where as you click on one, another node comes. If you click on that, it branches out. It's a free tool. There are other concept mapping tools. One I use called bubble.us. There are others called Liffey, Mindomo, to see thought on paper, to see thought, visualize. This is where we need to get students really engaged in the process of learning. I used to have students do concept maps and bring them and put them on the walls of my rooms. And we share what they have learned in class. They present them, in effect. Now you can do it electronically. There was a tool called Inspiration that Indiana used in the 1990s. It was never collaborative. It was never on the web. It was a standalone. Now it's called Webspiration, and it's now web-based. And here's another tool for concept mapping, showing relationships, showing connections, showing ideas. Getting students interested in science by having a webcam displaying penguins. You talked about penguins this morning. There's a woman here, Jenny Pennycook, a teacher. She goes down to Antarctica every year on National Science Foundation projects and interacts with kids in 300 classrooms across the world who ask her questions about penguins and what's happening in Antarctica, in the area that she's studying. And she's posted her blog up. She's posted pictures up. She's got a webcam of penguins up there, displaying learning. Visuals for videos for clinical education. So if you're training doctors, you can have visuals showing surgery, showing gastric bypass surgery or whatever you're trying to show. Or, you got visuals of opera here, learning about opera, learning about dance, learning about teaching, learning about occupational therapy. Videos can help with clinical education. Videos can help in a number of disciplines. These are an assembly of videos I had up there for people in Hong Kong last month or 2 months ago in the performing arts. These are all TED Talks on dance, on theater, on singing, and you can embed in pieces of these, and if they're in YouTube, you can actually have snippets that you can put in to a website called TubeChop. TubeChop will let you create small snippets of YouTube videos. If you don't want to show the whole 5-minute video and just want to show one concept for 90 seconds or 20 seconds, TubeChop will let you create a small snippet of that video sequence or segment, okay? This is different educational videos in here from the BBC. So here we've got the BBC videos, you got TED Talks, you got CNN. There are a number of websites out there which have video sharing sites, showing how to play a piano, showing how to dance, that kind of thing. Concept demonstrations. In Indiana University, we've got a big music school. As you know, your wife went to school in our music school. His wife teaches choir now and other things in Seattle while he lives here. So he's got to attend lectures like mine to keep him occupied. So here we've got music coming from the Carpathian Mountains area, which I guess is somewhere south of Russia, I'm going to guess, but south of Moscow, some 1,000 miles south of there, or 2,000 miles south. Anyhow, these musical performances are recorded at Indiana and posted up on a website of guest presentations to demonstrate concepts. Documentary debates. You might have a documentary of some, topic and have a debate about it. You might have an anchor, a video anchor displaying something. In this case, they're showing a drama scene. These are people, I think, in India performing. They're doing a performance showcasing a drama of an abusive husband situation in this case. And they're going through this dramatic performance, learning about acting, actually, in this case. But they're doing an urban performance project here in Lucknow, India. My colleague, my mentor, Brian Ford from the UK, is a former BBC TV and radio personality. He's the former head of Mensa in the UK, and he has a new theory on how dinosaurs died out, and he has put all his videos of his whole life on the internet, on the web, in a website called Telemonitor, as you can see there. He's put up all his work up on the internet. He's compiled all his life as a microbiologist and made a website up of that so kids could now follow him as a microbiologist and learn about microbiology from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s and today. He's recently retired from Cambridge University, and I had a chance to speak there a year ago. And so Brian will walk us through.
Hello, I'm Brian Ford, and in Laboratory News,
I don't know.
I'm looking at a theory
Sorry, I've got some, here we go.
about dinosaurs. The thing is that they just don't make sense. The low...
Thanks, Brian. I got to move on because we're almost at the end of time here. So tracking the life of a scientist, posting up, think about 200 years from now, all the people discovering things are going to have some interviews, some conference talks. They'll all be available for kids 100 years from now, 200 years from now. I already can show in my psychology class Pavlov, Piaget, Bandura. There's videos up of Pavlov from the early 1900s. Think about 100 years from now what we're going to have available to showcase and show. There are actually websites called Wonder How To and Howcast to show how to interview for a job, how to write a resume, how to shoot a bow and arrow, how to fix your phone when it falls in the toilet, which mine did once. They show you pretty much anything, how to cook. There's cooking channels. There's how to beat a Congo drum or Conga drum. There are video repositories from the Khan Academy, not just in math and science. They have them in music as well, as you can see here. So video repositories are growing to display learning in different ways and have reflections on what they're doing in that case. Videos in clinical education to teach at Sungkwangwan, SKKU, the top unit, well, was where the nobles went 1,000 years ago in Korea, and I had a chance to speak there a couple of years ago. Dead Sea Scrolls, no longer just experts examining Dead Sea Scrolls. They're now been scanned in for anyone in the world to take a look at. New discoveries are being made. Syrian culture being destroyed by terrorists recently. Immediately going up on the web showing what's happening. So you got articles, you got videos, you got experts explaining what's going on, displaying what's going on in that setting. Virtual microscopes for biology or other disciplines. You've got, and finally number 4.
All stations, prepare for reconnection.
The last part, I'll end with this.
You have only one chance to save them now. Send them back to the ship.
You'll let me beam them?
Send them the same way I do. I've given you the power. Do you understand? I have given you the power of the cube. Use it.
Okay, I've given you the power of tech variety. I've given you the power of R2D2. I hope you get to use it a little bit. Let me end with some doing kinds of things or activities. So part 4 gets at movement, games, drama, simulations, hands-on kinds of things. My students try to do things with my class. In this case, it's a simple discussion recap. A student created a summary of our discussion and created a PowerPoint slide deck, a Prezi presentation of the themes of the discussion. They did something with the discussion, just didn't exist in the ether. We recapped it. This student did a music summary of what she learned in my class. She did a rap song of what she learned. Another student did called the IST Groove Song. This student did the World is Open song because I have a book called The World is Open. This student did a guitar song summarizing his learning in my P540 class with different genres of music embedded in there. And I'd play it if I had time. It's kind of interesting to hear how he talks about Bandura and Skinner and Pavlov and things. Students at Notre Dame have an archive for all freshmen, high-quality work that their work can be displayed in. If they do a good final project, they can get in the freshman archive. Having that goal, that place to put something, a final work. I mentioned the teachers we push to tears, and then I could show them a gallery of student work, prior work. You can also combine things together. You don't have to just use part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. Here's Ray Dolby, who created Dolby noise reduction and different music-related, I guess, innovations. You can go to his Wikipedia page, but you can also go to videos of him talking about his inventions. You can also go to pictures. You can also go to other people talking about his importance, combining things together. Yes, we can have the Mozart biography site, but what about people, experts talking about Mozart? What about his music being played? What about listening to his music? Yes, we can hear about B.B. King and his dying recently and read about that, but how about listening to his music? Again, how about watching him perform in the past? Okay. Also, Robin Williams died recently. Not just go to his movies. How about going to other sites where people are talking about the importance of Robin Williams in that? This is the final one, I think. So my friends Aaron Derry and Charlie Miller created a website called Adventure Learning up in Minnesota, which I mentioned this morning. And they've traveled the world. And they meet people all over the world. They post up videos of where they go. They post up pictures, and then they also reflect on them themselves, a way to combine media together. So they have audio files, they have video files, they have text files, they have interviews of people they've met. Oh, there's another example. One of my students said, Dr. Bonk, I want to create a Facebook page for the class. I want to create a page for the class in Pinterest where we summarize all the articles you're reading in the class and students can discuss them. We can have the class stay alive after we graduate. We can come back to your class after we leave. So my students are creating Facebook pages for my class and Pinterest pages where they, after they finish the class, they can come back and mentor next year's students. They can talk to next year's students or just contribute. So I think that's the last one. So that's the tech variety model. That's the R2D2 model. I'm a few minutes over. My question for you is, if you had to pick one, and I'm going to make you pick one. Sorry to do this. If you had to pick one now, you've been in Master Class 1, you came a little, you missed the first part, the tech variety. The first part is a free book. If you had to pick one, those of you who are both part 1 and part 2, would you pick R2D2 or tech variety? Raise your hand if you'd pick the R2D2 model. And raise your hand if you pick the tech variety model. Usually I get the opposite. Interesting, really interesting. More people of the R2D2 model. Recency
I
effects.
have a thought on it.
Yeah.
So I think both are very critical for an instructor, especially for teaching online, to
Yeah.
do both.
Yeah.
One's very focused on the student and is a little more shorter, simpler. I think it's easier for them to wrap their head around. These are different types
Thanks,
of things
Steve.
you need to do for,
Send me a note.
have my students do activities-wise. But the other is I'm guessing, is maybe the overwhelming list of,
Yeah.
these are all the things I need to do to
That's a
properly
good point.
manage my course, which sometimes is, I think, harder when I work with clients.
Yes.
Than to consider all those, because there's a lot to do,
There's
a lot
a-
of responsibility.
We're creating learning environments today. Psychology has moved from discrete theories we debated to really meshing them together as eclectic approaches, which is the tech variety model is really an eclectic approach to thinking about creating an environment for learning. How many of you got at least one idea today? 2 or more? 5 or more? Some of you did. Where are we headed? My next book will be talking about Education 3.0 and where we're going. I'm calling it Education 20/20, like vision, 2020 vision. A vision of blended learning ideas and beyond is the subtitle. So we're not going to holodecks, but people in Canada are building holodeck-like experiences. So do I have a final question from someone in here?
Your customers, you select which one, tech variety or R2D2,
Yeah.
like it cannot be both.
That's a good way to think about it. Think about how to use each one of them in different ways or combined. Tech variety is about motivation. Maybe the R2D2 might be more about what you're going to do today in teaching a class, operationalizing some of the ideas. One might be planning the whole course, one might be a day-to-day kind of thing. Anyone else have a comment or a question? Yeah.
When you were talking about reflection, do you give your students options to reflect on certain aspects like values or emotions or future or?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I actually will give people different options for reflection, and I might team them together. I might have 8 different areas, and then I might pair them up if we pick the same, or assign those different areas and then come back to talk, because sometimes you have 5 or 6 issues you want to discuss, and you can't you want to get them all out, but you don't have time to do all.
Because sometimes we might reflect only on one
Yep.
aspect.
Right.
And so then challenging students to be able to expand in areas that they haven't really thought about reflecting.
Yes. Right, push them in. Yeah, oh yeah. And get them to think about some of the areas that if they're always deciding that you haven't pushed them far enough typically. So yeah, you want to push them to get to think outside, and challenge them. You had a question? Yeah. Anyone else? Well, go ahead.
Question. Have you thought of what it did empirically tested these 2 models to see the difference in student performance?
There have been some research papers out of the UK, out of New Zealand, out of Australia, of people who are researching these 2 models to compare. I have not done that. It's an open area, and some people have taken, my co-author told me about this recently. She's stumbled on a few research studies out of the UK and out of New Zealand. I think I found in New Zealand and Australia. So there are people doing that, which is great to see. I want to say thank you all for coming, and hopefully we'll see what's out there and engage our students. Thank you very much.